also, which was a big eye opener for me, I studied breathwork therapy and understood the magic of breathwork. That hopefully we're going to be able to talk about it, and why it's a big plus. So working through all that, slowly but surely, I started finding myself not working on the mind and body as I started with, and my doctorate was on the psychosomatic disease and illnesses like fibromyalgia. Understanding how really when we tackle the mental health dimension, actually we fix 80 to 90% of the physical symptoms, and whatever is happening on the body, on the physiological, it's quite reversible. Even if it's genetic component, even if it's a genetic predisposition, the epigenetic theories and science proves that it's reversible. When we change the mindset, when we change the stress and the anxiety and the fear and the depression and the self-doubt and the self blame, when we change all that and we change the breath that comes with it.
Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people watching us from around the world, they say, okay, we know where Canada is, and in British Columbia on the west coast, right? Right. And then we have this big city, they would say Vancouver, right? Where are you compared to Vancouver? Well, we are 500 miles north or 800 kilometers for our European friends north of Vancouver. And it is beautiful here within 50 miles of Prince George. We have probably 100 lakes and we have lots of friends, black bears, grizzly bears, caribou, deer, wolves, foxes, you name it. We have them all here. We call it paradise. Today, a very, very special podcast. We have a very, very special guest. His name is Dr. Jad Wehbe, and Dr. Wehbe is an international speaker and a mind-body therapist. He is an expertise in mental and behavioral health, very current topics actually, chronic pain and emotional stress. Dr. Jad, welcome to the show.
Hi, John. How are you?
I'm doing well. Can I just call
Thank you
you
for having
Jad?
me. Yeah, please do.
Okay, so give me a bit of, in our guest watching us from around the world here, bit of your background. Where were you from originally? And then obviously in your educational stream, you went through a specialty and psych and the psychotherapy issue. Where did you study, and then what brought you in that direction, and where are you now?
Yeah. So first, I was reading your biography and your story, and I felt that I can to some in some places relate so much because I come from Lebanon, which is a war country, and I lived and I experienced war and bombs in real time. So, and I've seen your story, which is amazingly inspiring, and it relates so much. So that's somehow my background, cultural background. I come from Lebanon, and I've experienced war, me and my family, and then I'm in Canada now. So there's a lot of similarity. I came here recently to avoid war and not to allow my not to take the risk of my children going through the same. So for a better
Okay.
life, for a better quality of life,
Right.
and I'm sure that some resonates with you easily. So
Exactly.
yeah, so that's my cultural background. Now, my professional story is also somehow similar, not with the same dimensions that you had and the same, huge success you made. I would, this inspiring for me. But on my size, proportional to my size, I had some similar, um, r- you know, um, roadblocks that I had to overcome. So I started my career on the physical therapy. I had a bachelor degree in physical therapy. And soon enough, when I started dealing with physical illnesses and pain, I started noticing, because I was always triggered and inspired by mental health conditions. My mom um, struggled a lot with mental health challenges. So I've seen her all my life struggling with chronic depression and a lot of things. She passed away a year ago. So that was a big
Okay.
drive for me. I always, as a child, wanted to help her and help the, I'm gonna call it the toxic family dynamic that I was in. And as a child, we have this, you know, almost intuitive drive or instinctive drive to make things better for the adults and for the grown-ups around us. So it was a big drive for me to try to help her and try to help the family, which was impossible because we cannot change our parents and it's hard to change a toxic family environment. So, and I say it out loud and I'm super at peace with it now. But it wasn't an easy journey to come to term with that. So, having said that, I had this big drive to help people beyond the physical pain because I've seen the the deeper aspect and the deeper dimension to that. So, physical therapy was a bit disappointing for me, and actually had some similar, some depression signs and symptoms as soon as I graduated. So I spent 4 years studying what exactly, like, I'm quite disappointed from the set of skills I've learned. So I pursued studying more and more. I studied osteopathy, I became an osteopath, and I studied Chinese medicine. And Chinese medicine was an eye opener for me because here's this more than 2000 years culture that talks about mind and body, that talks about how emotions can make us sick, how emotions can impact each organ, and in their own way, in their own medicine and culture, that normalizes what used to be taboo in my university study. Like, because there's anxiety or stress. That's why this person is struggling with migraine or with stomach pain or with low back pain, chronic low back pain. So, no, it's, they look just at the organic aspect. And, you go to the Chinese medicine, and that's, yeah, of course, it's because of chronic stress. It's part of the equation, it's part of the basic knowledge. So that was a big eye opener for me. And since then, I never stopped studying mental health because I felt, yeah, there's so important. So I started by studying hypnotherapy and then cognitive and behavioral therapy and acceptance based therapy. And you name it, I didn't leave anything up until I also, which was a big eye opener for me, I studied breathwork therapy and understood the magic of breathwork, that hopefully we're going to be able to talk about it, and why it's a big plus. So working through all that, slowly but surely, I started finding myself not working on the mind and body as I started with, and my doctorate was on the psychosomatic disease and illnesses like fibromyalgia. Understanding how really when we tackle the mental health dimension, actually we fix 80 to 90% of the physical symptoms, and whatever is happening on the body, on the physiological, it's quite reversible. Even if it's genetic component, even if it's a genetic predisposition, the epigenetic theories and science proves that it's reversible. When we change the mindset, when we change the stress and the anxiety and the fear and the depression and the self-doubt and the self blame, when we change all that and we change the breath that comes with it, we change the physical translation. No need almost for physical intervention, or minimal physical intervention would be more than enough now. So, in a nutshell, that's the journey. And then once I started, working with mental health cases, I started encountering my personal challenges. I wanted to grow. I wanted to become an entrepreneur. I wanted to help people beyond the one-to-one aspect. And I started facing my own challenges of, okay, how I'm going to work with my own self-doubts, with my own self-limitations, to start teaching what I do. And instead of just changing the world one person at a time, but changing the world one course at a time, and one student at a time, because you teach one person, you have an exponential impact on how you can change the world. And then I started wanting to be a speaker, and I went to a TEDx talk, and I shared as much as I can. And in Lebanon, I had a TV show on the national scale to create this awareness and the drive, trying to inject this drive into people's mind and mindsets so they can work and grow. So, in a nutshell, I don't know, what do you want to know more? Tell me.
Well, I love your background, Jad, is that especially when you make references to, that uh, April is important for me, and so is May, because I was born in 1940 during the start of the Second World War, when Hitler, the dictator, decided to first in 1938 take part of Poland as belonging to Germany, and then decided to attack Western Europe. And then, in my family background, that's why it's so important to you for you to talk about that as it relates to me as well. As my mom and dad were married in 1938. They were in love, and they fairly quickly had a boy and a girl, and my dad worked in a lumber mill, and they rented a beautiful little house, and so they were in love. And then everything changed. Is that my dad was called into the Dutch army in April of 1940, and the last time they heard from him was before the bombing of Rotterdam on May the 14th, 85 years ago, when thousands of people were killed in the center of Rotterdam. For 5 years, my parents, my mom would not know if he survived or did he die in the bombing. And then from there on in, it was war. And amazingly, as you probably can relate to as well, by the time I was 3.5 years old, I remember I can hear all the big bombers overhead from the Allied forces that were bombing the war infrastructure. And I was born in northeastern Holland, 10, 15 minutes from the border. And May the 5th is an important day for us, because May the 5th, 1945, is when the German army capitulated, and then all of those dates are important to me, but I still remember the war years. I remember no food. I remember going out with my brother and sister, and every morning we would go with gunny sacks in the railroad yards, pick up anything edible and burnable, and then saw far too much that we should not have seen. And then we were liberated by the Canadian forces on April the 12th, 1945. And that's about 80 years ago for me. And so it still has, even now, still an impact. And as you know, is that some people may believe respectfully that war years, after the war is over, everything goes back to normal. Well, it doesn't. It can take not one generation, but generations. And I'm still
Of
being
course.
affected even today by TDSP and the inner child and all of those things as a result of the war. And but at the same time, if we look today, in particular, how fortunate we are in Canada, in North America, really, because all we have to do is look at Europe, Ukraine comes to mind, and Russia, and then the Middle East, obviously, all the challenges we have, and you will speak about that a bit more, is that we see there. And then I fly around a lot here. I've been now here in Canada for 60 years, and obviously I'm very busy in a lot of areas. I fly around a lot. I always sit by the window, because if I look out of the window, I say, it's paradise. It is
Yeah.
paradise. How lucky I am, and we are
We need
collectively.
Yeah, we need constant reminders in
Exactly.
another way.
Now, in your particular case, what comes to mind for me is that the Middle East, in particular, with all the challenges that we have now in the Middle East, without becoming political about it, but I think about Lebanon in particular as an amazing country that was very, very, very successful and a beautiful country, and it has gone through all these challenges, partially because of dictatorships, likely, partially because of the delicate area where it is connected on the one side by Syria, the other side by Israel, and then all the challenges around the Middle East in a general way, the effects from Iran and all those things that are going on. So extremely unfortunate because what I believe a lot of people, I've never been there, but what I've seen of it and what I've watched of it, that those areas are very, very beautiful, and Lebanon was very, very prosperous. And as you already said in your presentation, is you were educated in Lebanon, went to the universities, but it is still very much, even today, as we speak, struggling to again establish their independence. And so maybe talk about that a bit in terms of your background there,
Yeah,
where it is now, and where we hope it will go.
yeah. The problem is that this has a big impact on the personal identity, and in Lebanon there is a big identity or collective identity crisis, just like anywhere in the world. But there's always the connection between the political views and the personal identity, and the interconnection between them, and how this identity can be sometimes limiting and crippling at certain places, and how the personal identity and the work on the personal identity should be able or enable someone to outgrow this collective identity and the collective identity crisis that is deeply embedded in Lebanon, and it's deeply conflictual, and this really has a, a, a big crippling impact on the capacity and the potential of for growth, just like living the bombing and living the danger of this time this bomb will gonna hit us, and hearing it and feeling the building where you live on would shake and under your feet, and you don't know if it's gonna fall down in you, if you and your family you're gonna survive this 5 next minute or not. And this is very traumatizing, but it takes an open mindset and being able to look at the situation from outside yourself, from outside the environment even, and outside the local collective vision, to travel a big distance mentally to see the world through a different angle so you can escape that prison. Because this prison is a it's a cognitive prison, is when you are stuck in this identity, I need to fight those and not to allow those to fight me, and you're stuck, and you need to break through to get out and see the world through
Now,
a different lens.
now, correct me if I'm wrong, Jad. You know, Lebanon has had challenges for many, many, many years. But when you were younger or in the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, it was very, very profit. It was very stable. And correct me if I'm wrong, and there was stable government and infrastructure and all the things. But then it became the friction from the one
Yeah, at
direction,
the
the other.
beginning of the 70s, things started being bad and never were good enough for a long enough period to call it stable.
Was it
since the
then
beginning of the 70s.
was it democratic rule or a form of dictatorship, or did it a combination of all the above and all the
A
differences?
combination,
Combination, yeah.
definitely a combination. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not real democracy, not
No.
the democracy we know it here.
Yeah.
No.
So, but still, it's a beautiful, beautiful country.
Yeah, of course. The nature is amazing. There's a lot of advantages in Lebanon, but unfortunately, uh, the identity crisis that led to all these wars and the surrounding also that was a toxic environment for to favor the identity crisis. So the toxic environment interacted with the identity crisis to create this big mess that never ended really since the 70s till now, in a
So,
nutshell.
as we podcasting to the world, having a lot of people that watching us, you and me, having this conversation, that are seeing this on a daily basis, virtually, things going on, Eastern Europe, Ukraine, Russia, blah, 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 all of that stuff troubling, but also watching, in particular now, the Middle East and the things going on there, is that it makes us, me and others, likely wonder what was driving it. Is it political differences? Is it differences about borders? Is it differences about uh, uh, religion and differences in those
All of
areas?
the above, all of the
All
above.
of the
It's
above.
power, it's money, it's culture differences, identity, struggle over power, struggle over money, struggle about, if you don't believe like me, if you have a different belief system, then you're my enemy.
Yeah,
Considering what's different is the enemy,
yeah.
and each one with the power struggle wanting to impose his belief system on the other person and want to impose power and have the financial supremacy and superiority. So that's the reason behind all wars.
As you and I, Jad, grew up in troubling times, saw far too much that we should not have seen, felt uneasy about our families and all the struggles that went with it. My dad, that came back after 5 years, and I already was then young. I had no idea who this guy was, and he never really talked about the war. He saw far too much. All he had is a helmet with him that had a hole through it that came in one way and out another, that missed his brain by fractions of inches. And so he became alcoholic, a silent one, not one on the streets and this kind, but
Yeah.
he never communicated really, always stressed, and that was always there. And then and then growing up in that type of an environment and appreciating stability, when I looked at growing up in the 40s and then in the 50s. I still remember the liberation of Holland 80 years ago in May the 5th, 1945, 80 years ago now. And then at the same time, Europe, to a certain extent, was in ruins. The Marshall
Yeah.
Plan was established. The United States, Canada, the UK, and a number of other companies helping to rebuild Europe to where it is today. I always looked at the United States, and not trying to be political, but I looked at them as that they were the foundation of democratic rule. And what was the foundation is the Constitution that was overpowering all things in the United States, as it does in other democratic rules, is that it started with we the people, and that then became the driving force. I'm somewhat troubled by some of the things that are going on now, but I hope for the sake of all of us, but not only in North America, but also around the world, that we will be preserving democratic rule as the foundation. And, that became very, very important in my opinion. And so, after the Second World War, for the same reason as you did, a lot of people then were afraid that Russia would push through Western Europe and obviously Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, Poland, on and on and on. Western part of Germany became under Russian rule, and there was fear for a lot of people in Holland that they would push through into Holland, and then people in particular that were in the armies or fought in the underground would be the first ones to be eliminated. And a lot of those people, for their benefit, it was always a hard thing to leave their country, because I came from a history of my all going all the way back to the 1500s, and then living in northeastern Holland, and we had a family living there. And if you would get married to somebody and you would go to another province about an hour away by car, if that, then they said, oh my God, he's leaving, we'll never see him back, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And to go to the other side of the world was inconceivable, virtually. And
Yeah.
especially right after the Second World War, there were no communications, there were no iPhones, there were no computers, and you did it by telegram or and send everything is okay and blah 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 and stop, and then so. But all of that has changed now. But then a lot of people left the country, not for them, but for their families, to find peace and tranquility and potentially opportunity. And so that's what happened in Western Europe and Holland in particular, but also through the rest of Europe, that then emigrated either to the United States or Canada, and changed
Yeah.
their worlds.
That's our story too.
Yeah. And so just coming back to mental health, more and more is, and that's why I liked what you were saying about the Chinese approach to fitness, health, and well being, is saying physical health and well being is one, but it is in combination with all the other things around you. And I find that very interesting, because, and I'm obviously not a medical doctor or anything like that, but I've observed a medical system here, and to a certain extent in Europe as well. But what we see in North America now is that it needs a different approach. And what is now coming more and more to the surface is the ability for people to be open about, although they may be very successful, to talk about mental health and challenges that a person may have, including stress and anxiety and all of those things. I've gone through all of that. I have ADHD, I'm dyslexia, and all those things. People are starting to be more vocal about
Yeah.
it, and the stigma
Starting.
starting, and
Start.
I'm trying to do that, and I feel I have an obligation to do that, but
Yeah.
I believe that's the direction we're going in, and so, and podcasting to that is also very, very important, because as we sitting here, and I'm not bragging about our podcasting, but we have nearly 1 million subscribers on YouTube, and that probably means another million. We may have as many between 2 and 2.5 million people watching us in this conversation about things that are very, very important. And so, and I find it amazing what you were saying about your exposure, or you studied the medical system of China.
Yeah, and because of my ultra scientific background and my masters and my doctorate, I always try to bring the alternative medicine to the science filter of seeing things, and I tried and started digging and understanding more what does science bring to this, what's the translation, scientific translation to this ancient philosophy that is super valid, and we know that it's there, we see it, we feel it. So, and which brings me to talk about a little bit. I don't want to dive into too much technicalities at all. What we call the biopsychosocial model. It's how the biology is affected by the psychology and by the sociology, how our social life impacts our psychology, and how our social life impacts our biology. So, if we have good friends, if we have a good support system, if we have friends we trust, we rely on, we're satisfied in our friendships, we have a higher level of serotonin, which is the best mood stabilizer and the natural antidepressant we have within us. So, this is just a tiny example how the social quality of our life can impact our biology, how serotonin and testosterone can impact, that can come from how much we are satisfied of from our social life, can impact our posture. Our posture is impacted by the serotonin and the testosterone, which can impact a lot of pain. And you know very well the muscles and the posture and the importance of that due to your background. So, on the other hand, how the psychology can impact, the placebo effect and the nocebo effect, how if we believe that something can cure us, actually it can cure us. And if we believe that something can make us sick, it can actually make us sick, to some degrees, to some extent. And that's the biopsychosocial model that integrates the emotions, the social life, and the I call it the scientific holistic approach in opposition to the cultural holistic approach in the Chinese medicine. The Occidental medicine translated it into the biopsychosocial model. And I always refer to that model when I teach or when I treat my clients or patients. We always go back to the biopsychosocial model. We cannot just look at the biology in an isolated way. We cannot look at the psychology in an isolated way. We cannot look at the social life in an isolated. It's all interconnected, and that's the best scientific way to translate holistic approach. And unfortunately, nowadays, this biopsychosocial model is poorly used in modern medicine now, unfortunately, and we're losing it, even though all the data and all the scientific data and all the recent publications are pushing towards, you know, doing that. We know that, that lifestyle can, and adhering to a healthy lifestyle can prevent up to 80% of chronic illnesses nowadays. It requires adhering to a healthy lifestyle that fits you, that is personalized for you. And I'm sure you relate so much to that. I know with your story and background and all the things you've achieved, you know how important that is. But the problem is that just 20% will adhere to these lifestyle facts. The science of adherence is at the heart of this biopsychosocial model. If we have depression, if we have anxiety, if we don't believe in our capacities, if we are afraid of the unknown, we won't be able to adhere to this lifestyle. We're going to be depleted, and we're going to be more sick. Entrepreneurship mindset, and I'm sure also you know that, is highly connected to believing in yourself, into being able to start a project even though you don't really know how it's going to end. being in the mindset of accepting things would unfold along the way, and you being okay with that and be able to co-function with the unknown, with the anxiety. That's a mental health skill and ability, right? And doing sports and sleeping well and eating well will help you be in this mindset, and working on this mindset also directly with changing your belief system will help you become healthier. And you create this virtuous circle in opposition to the vicious circle. You create a positive circle that's going to create a positive build up. And that's what's all about. That was the main messages that we want to share, and we want to help people start working on it. But as you said, if we don't talk openly about it, if we don't untaboo it, 90% of people are still afraid of sharing it. I was looking last yesterday at the social media influencer in the Middle East talking about, you know, sorry, BSing the mental health. Just go have a coffee with a friend, eat ice cream, and buy some, new shirt, and you're gonna feel better, and BS on therapy and mental health. 90% of the people, this person has like, 100K followers. 90% of her followers agreed with her. See how far we still are from untabooing and raising the needed awareness. We're far. We're better, but we're still far.
Now, the other part about it, Jad, is likely that our medical system, and I have a great deal of respect. I have a lot of friends that are medical doctors and are active in the medical community, but it is not being taught. It is not until we bring it further forward for all the reasons that you said, that everything is connected, but the driving force underneath it is that you must try to create self-confidence. You must believe that you are just as good as anybody else, not better than, but everything is possible, and start with the foundation, you know, of the obvious. Don't smoke, don't drink, blah, blah, blah. That's all a given. And then, so what I usually say, the things that are important in my life is that vitamin D, get lots of sunshine, or in some form of fashion, is important. Get 7 to 9 hours sleep, then do exercise, not only, but also strength training somewhat, but start with walking. And even if you do it 2 3 times a week, a lot of people say, no, I'm too old, blah blah. Start walking, and start being careful about your diet. My wife is a vegetarian, and so I didn't listen as well as I could have for a long time. But then something happened to me where I nearly died in 2008, about 17 18 years ago. I had a case of diverticulitis, and I came that close. It ruptured, and so
God.
they took a piece out of my colon. But so that got the attention from me. I was not I was doing okay, but not as good as I could have. And that was 16 17 years ago. And so then what I did then is I did what everybody else does. At the end of the year, we say we're going to do this, that, and this, and that, and that, and then we're going to buy a membership to the gym, and we go to the gym. And then 2 weeks later, we can find 100 reasons why we're too busy to go to the gym until the end of the following year. And so, but I did. I got a trainer, and I went to the gym, 16 years ago in 2009, after I recovered from being nearly dead. And so so I've been training ever since. And today at nearly 85, I wrote a book about that as well, as you see this
Yeah,
one
I
here.
saw it.
You saw that. I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America at nearly 85, and I qualified for the
That's so
Arnold's.
inspiring. That's so
And
inspiring.
but the key, the point that I'm making is everything is possible. And so
Yes.
many people say, "Well, I'm too old," and blah blah. No, you're not too old.
And that's the belief system. That's again the toxic belief system we hold within us.
Exactly. And then the other part about it, Jad, that I did then, so now I do the shopping for my wife and myself, if I go to a grocery store, she relies on me and she trusts me. I go to the grocery store, but I shop on the outside, inside the grocery store, because I don't want all the on the aisles are all the processed and super processed foods. I have no idea
Yeah.
what is in it, and we don't want it. And so that's another part that we do. Watch our diet, and then so as I said, between vitamin D, sleep, exercise, diet, and then staying positive. The other part that is important to me is that the and I wrote it here. 2547 is, you say, well, what's the 2547? Well, that's what I had in my pocket when I came
Yeah.
here.
I've seen.
You see it.
Yeah.
And but what I got underneath that is attitude is always been important to me. No matter what happens, I will stay positive. Attitude, passion, work ethic, but will follow is success. And I'm the hardest working individual around my area. That I always get up at 5:30 in the morning, and I always make my bed, and I always think I'm late, and so and most days, virtually I consider myself to be so lucky as being here and all the opportunities that we have, and that is very, very important.
Yeah, but as you said, something very important. It's that it starts with the belief system, and everything you've done comes from a trait in the personality that we call conscientiousness. And this conscientiousness, being able to put the rules for ourselves and stick to them no matter what, and adhere to these lifestyle uh, changes or ingredients, it's a way of it's a form of self-love and self-care. So if someone hates himself, if we have too much self-doubt, if the voice of self-doubt is eating us from the inside, we become depleted, and we say, why? And hence the paradox of working and improving the self. I'm gonna explain it in a minute. It's like, why should I work on myself if I hate myself, if I don't like myself? Why would I put all this effort, take the vitamin D, eat healthy, wake up early, do all this, tick all these boxes if I don't like what I'm seeing? At the same time, some people say, but if you like what you see, then why would you change? If you like the way you are, then you're not going to work on yourself, which is very wrong, because we need to love ourselves as a person, as an existence, as a being, irrelevant of all these physical appearances, conditions, mistakes, successes, things we regret, things we wish we never did, pain, memories, irrelevant of all that, the physical appearances and the internal image we have about ourselves. We need to love ourselves despite all. Then, for that, we would want to have the best possible version of ourselves. This is
Okay.
where we get the motivation, not by hating the way we look, by loving ourselves and wanting the best version of ourselves. Sometimes we need a wake up call, just like what you did, almost dying from a medical condition to wake up. But hopefully, we can do better and we can inspire people. And that's your journey, inspiring people to not to reach that place. If we can make others do what we were able to do and without reaching that danger zone, how good it would be.
And so in times that I do a lot of presenting to young people or on high schools or colleges or universities, and what I say a lot of times to them, what I believe in is that people are too preoccupied about how do I look, how is this, how is that, and how is this, and what I
Exactly.
wear. I should have this different, and this should be different, and this should be. I say no. There is only on this earth one of you, only one. And you are special as to who you are. Not based on religion or anything like that, but there's only one of you. And so start from that, and rather than to being preoccupied, it is this doesn't look right on me, and that's probably what they think about this and all the other things. No, be proud of who you are because in the world you're special.
Which is very important, and I always try to preach what you're saying with keeping an open mind, because as a successful entrepreneur and all the amazing things you've achieved in your life, you you would it would be impossible to achieve if you fell under one of these two traps. And correct me if I'm wrong. If you had too much self-doubt, you wouldn't be able to make it.
No,
But if you were not able to question yourself at moments, and have and be able to accept negative feedback, and to re-question your approach, and to rethink it, and to recreate yourself over and over again, and question yourself in a constructive way, you also wouldn't have been able to make it, right?
I agree. Yeah,
So it's the
absolutely.
right amount. That's always say. People tend to go to extremes. If you doubt yourself too much, you're gonna it's gonna cripple you. And if you don't doubt yourself enough in the right healthy way, then you're gonna hit a wall somewhere, and you won't be able to adjust and create yourself again and keep
Exactly.
on growing. We need the balance between, not too much self-doubt, not too little, not too much fear, but not too little fear, not too much self-confidence, but not too low self-confidence. We need this right balance always, which is
Right.
hard to keep.
That brings me to a question: the untold secrets about breath work that you referred to. What's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
theory
You
about
read my
that?
mind. you know, Breath work is an amazing tool, because the main limitation is our self awareness. If I tell you how much self doubt you struggle with, are you on the verge of having too much self doubt or not enough self doubt? Most of the people with low self awareness, which is 80% of people, would have hard time to answer that question, and will have hard time to differentiate. How can I filter positive self doubt from negative self doubt? Right? How can I be aware that I'm doubting myself too much? How can I be aware that I don't trust myself? How can I be aware that I don't trust the unknown? This self awareness of these elementary components, as I call them, like how to deal with negative feedback, how much self confident am I, how much I can think outside the box and be creative, how do I deal with mistakes, how do I um, push myself outside my comfort zone, how much all these elementary skills, I cannot work on them and change them if I'm not aware of them. So the first barrier is awareness. The beauty of breath work is that it can enable us to be aware of all these components through physical manifestation. When we do a breath work a session, on when I teach breath work, I teach to my students how to watch the non-verbal body language cues through the breath, through the facial expressions, through the posture, how these manifestations during the breathwork session can give us these indicators, and how during the session the person going through the breath work would start being aware. We see changes in the brain waves that enhances self-awareness. We start being aware of what's crippling us, of what's blocking us. So this is the amazing power of that tool. Having said that, in some cases, practitioners who would use breathwork without having this global awareness, and that main example that I gave you about self-doubt, too much self doubt is bad, but no self doubt at all is as bad.
Correct.
And when you practice breath work, when you teach breath work, is if you don't have this perception, breath work sometimes can do harm, because it can inflate the self power. It gives so much boost of self confidence and decrease the anxiety and decrease the self doubt in such an efficient way that if the practitioner is not aware of the other side of not enough self doubt is as bad, it can turn bad.
To
which
find,
which brought me yeah which brought me to work so deeply on this amazing tool. And I've studied breathwork therapy, I studied rebirthing, I've studied holotropic breathing, and there's a big spiritual dimension to it, unfortunately, that tend to impose also, which is another dark side of breathwork or hidden secrets of breathwork. It's that some ancient breathwork tools try to impose spiritual beliefs and might not respect your unique spiritual beliefs, whatever they are. You have the right to have your own spiritual beliefs, and you shouldn't be influenced to change your spiritual beliefs, whatever they are. So, another hidden secret is that ancient tools with the breathwork can have the tendency to slowly impose, which brought me to put together a breathwork technique that I called emotion liberation breathing, and hence the innovative aspect and how we need to, as an entrepreneurship mind, break all this mental health barrier that you were able to break to grow that much and to change yourself into a different person, with the amazing success you did with these $25 that were in your pocket, right? So you had to be innovative, and you had to break and to think outside the box and not to be afraid of creating something new, thinking outside the box, bringing new concepts. And what I did is I took all these ancient knowledge about breathwork that can have these downsides, these hidden secrets that it can blind uh, blindside you about not having self-doubt at all. It can blindside you and inject negative or different spiritual beliefs than yours. And I try to take the power of this, but to frame it in a tool that we consider all these components in a healthy way and remove all spiritual beliefs outside of it. So these are the hidden secrets of breathwork. It's amazing, it's super powerful, but we need to be careful about the type of technique we use in breathwork. It can be amazing, but it can be bad too.
yeah, so to find that balance, that
Yeah.
would then, in a way, give you the ability to build teams and to how can emotional health shape the way we lead that would build teams.
Okay. I'll give you an example, and I'll give you example about concerning the managerial, how you manage a team. Okay, as a leadership style. If you as a leader, you don't trust your team, if you don't teach your team how to trust each other, but we know you cannot trust someone else if you don't trust yourself. So we need to build self-confidence and self-trust in order to build trust in the peer. If a leader would have high self-doubt, he's going to micromanage, he's going to create a toxic environment. It's going to inflict and impact negatively the team capacity to work in a synchronized way, to rise above the challenges, to be creative, to go beyond borders, and to do amazing performances. You need to trust. You need to teach your team how to have the right amount of self-doubt, right?
Exactly.
If you don't have it, how you're going to teach it? You're going to
Yeah.
micromanage. So it's going to ruin the team. Breathwork is super powerful into bypassing all these self-awareness barriers that sometimes it can take years for a person, and books and readings and hours to build this self-awareness. Well, as breathwork is a fast shortcut to that, as long as we keep an eye on this balance and we don't move into any extreme, it can move fast forward into creating and enabling this balance in the leadership and within each member of that team. So we can work the synchronicity and how the team can synchronize and have a balanced self confidence, not too much, not too poor, not to be afraid of making mistakes, but also staying accountable when we make mistakes, is finding this fine tune balance, which breathwork is an amazing tool to allow a person, an individual, or a team to reach it fast.
Now, one of the things that is very common among many people that have, why do so many people self sabotage weight loss, and how do we reprogram that? It's very common about many, many people.
Yeah, we've mentioned it in a way when I told you about the paradox. It's like when you hate what you see in the mirror, right? You're sabotaging yourself.
Yeah,
But somehow you think you're motivating yourself. You say,
yeah,
I hate what I see in the mirror and I'm gonna change it.
yeah,
You're starting it with the wrong foot. You're sabotaging it because you need to love what you see in the mirror, love the person inside, to want the best for that person. You need to love what you see in the mirror and say, I want to be the best version of myself because I love myself. Is again having this balance capacity to say, I want to improve myself. Here are my mistakes. Here are my weak points
yeah,
without being depleted by saying that.
exactly.
That's the sabotage because we started with the wrong foot. It's either we're too harsh in criticizing ourselves, then we're not motivated anymore,
No,
or we say I love myself, and then I'm gonna accept myself the way I am, and therefore I'm not gonna improve myself. And then you stay in the same place. And that's the I would say the delicate balance that needs to be done. If you move a bit to the left, you're sabotaging yourself. If you
yeah.
move a little bit to the right, you're sabotaging yourself. And that's so
Hence,
common.
Hence, in a lot of cases, it's not effective because somebody has already accepted that that's the way it is, nothing I can do about it. So, and I don't like
Exactly,
myself, and
exactly. And
I'm
I'm sure you
saying
can so much
no.
personally relate in
Yeah,
your journey and the
yeah,
amazing things you did on yourself. You can see this fine balance.
exactly.
Because if you're training and you have someone tell you, hey, John, if you do it this way, it's better. You're not going to say, no, go away. I know what I'm doing. You're going to be able, you're open to positive, to feedback. If you're not, you wouldn't be able to improve yourself.
Yeah,
Is
I like it, Jad. Now, the other question that I have: why do high achievers often ignore emotional pain until the body screams?
ah, it happened to you, right? When
Yeah,
when you had this medical condition, what
yeah,
happened? you know the biopsychosocial model was deeply involved here. I'm sure you can look back and see why your lifestyle was so poor, why
yeah,
your eating was so poor,
yeah,
why everything was so poor, and how it was related to all the history and the baggage of pain and trauma you
yeah.
struggled with. How much you can relate to that?
Exactly.
A lot.
A lot.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So we think because we are achievers and entrepreneur and high achiever things, yeah, I need to make results. I need to make that amount of money. I need to grow my company that much. I need to reach that amount. And it's a result oriented mindset when we are high achievers. And that leaves you with a huge blind spot because you think that's a waste of time. Dealing with emotions is going to take time and effort and time investment and reading and self awareness and journaling and expressing feelings and emotions so I can follow these self love rules, right?
yeah,
So it feels like a waste of time, but it's going to come and bite you somewhere.
exactly. So Jad, in closing, that one of the most important parts for me has been believe in who you are and that you can. You, it shouldn't be you can't. And age, I'm an example of that. I'm nearly 85.
Yes.
Is an example. You're never too old. It will change your life. And at the end of the day, what is important is quality of life. And so it is the most precious and the least understood part of it, how all elements of your body are working together. It's not just the physical part, it's the emotional part, and all those things that we talked
Yeah.
about. So, how can people contact you? Have you got a website or information available to all those people around the world watching us?
Yeah, they can contact me through the Bridge Institute. It's where we give all our courses, bridgeinstitute.www.thebridgeinstitute.education, or they can contact me through my Instagram. It's my name, Jad Wehbe, Wehbe. You can see my picture, my profile picture in a TED talk, in a TEDx talk, sorry. So it would be a pleasure guiding. My motto is to make people realize that that's my favorite quote, that time is not a healer. We need to be proactive in the healing journey. Time will deplete us if we just sit and watch it. We cannot sit. We need to be responsible, take responsibility, and learn. There's so many tools. Learn from me, learn from you, learn from anyone. Just pick someone and decide to learn from them and stick to this learning journey and keep working on yourself and never surrender and accept pessimistic thinking and accept limiting beliefs that I'm too old, it's impossible, it's too hard. Keep working, find the right person you relate to and ask for help. Mentorship is an essential part of the healing journey and the growth journey and the empowerment journey. Ask for mentorship. Don't let any taboo belief stop you from reaching for the right mentor for you. You choose who's the right mentor for you. You pick it, learn, put effort, read books, take courses, study, work hard on your knowledge, and you will be able to grow infinitely.
It was an amazing podcast, Dr. Jad Wehbe.
Thank you. It
Thanks.
was amazing for me too, and it's nice meeting you and seeing you face to face. Really, you're so inspiring.
Thanks, Jad. Take care. And this
Thank
podcast
you.
will come out later on today.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
It was a pleasure. You too.
Bye bye.
Bye.